Welcome to Global Nexus. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. Nexperia's story is a cautionary tale of globalization, one that reveals how the pursuit of efficiency and profit can sometimes come at the cost of national security and autonomy. In a world where supply chains stretch across continents, economic ties can quickly become geopolitical chains, binding nations in ways they never anticipated. Once a proud Dutch company, Nexperia is now a key supplier of basic, essential chips for everything from cars to washing machines. These tiny components are the unsung heroes of modern life, quietly powering the devices and vehicles we rely on every day. But its Dutch roots are now just a facade. Since 2019, it's been fully owned by China's Wingtech, a tech giant with deep state ties and ambitions that reach far beyond its borders. This shift quietly placed a vital piece of Europe's industrial infrastructure in the hands of a strategic rival, raising questions about who truly controls the technology that underpins Europe's economy. For years, the arrangement seemed to work. Dutch engineers, Chinese owners, and a seamless supply chain that kept factories humming and products flowing to market. But Nexperia's chips are the lifeblood of European manufacturing, especially the automotive sector, where even a brief disruption can halt production lines and threaten thousands of jobs across the continent. The company's dual identity, European heritage, Chinese control, became a microcosm of Europe's dilemma: how to balance the benefits of open markets and foreign investment with the growing risks to security and sovereignty. As tensions between the West and China escalated, the fragility of this arrangement became impossible to ignore, sparking heated debates in boardrooms and parliaments alike. Nexperia was no longer just a business. It had become a symbol of Europe's vulnerability in a world where technology and power are increasingly intertwined. The moment of reckoning was fast approaching, forcing Europe to confront the risks of its dependencies and to ask hard questions about the future of its industries. The stage was set for a crisis that would test the continent's resolve and determine whether Europe could regain control over its technological destiny. The crisis began quietly, almost unnoticed by the public or the media. It all started with what seemed like a routine business move, a seemingly minor acquisition that barely made headlines at first. In late 2022, Nexperia, a global semiconductor company, bought Nowi, a small Dutch startup specializing in energy harvesting chips. These chips, though tiny, held enormous potential for powering the next generation of IoT devices, and even had possible military applications. Normally, this deal would have flown under the radar. But in a climate of rising suspicion toward Chinese tech takeovers, especially in sensitive sectors, it triggered alarm bells across Europe. The Dutch government, invoking newly strengthened foreign investment laws, launched a sweeping national security probe into the deal, determined to scrutinize every detail. The investigation dragged on for months, casting a long shadow over both Nexperia and Nowi. Business stalled, partnerships froze, and uncertainty grew. Frustrated by the endless scrutiny and mounting pressure, Nexperia announced it would sell Nowi, hoping this move would finally put an end to the controversy. But the government's concerns had only grown deeper. The issue was no longer just about Nowi's technology, but about Nexperia's Chinese ownership and the broader risks it posed to national security. By 2025, the Dutch government took the unprecedented step of seizing control of Nexperia, citing urgent national security risks and the need to protect critical technology. What started as a small, almost invisible acquisition had now escalated into a direct challenge to Beijing's influence over a vital European asset, sparking international outrage. The spark from Nowi had ignited a geopolitical firestorm, drawing in world leaders and raising tensions between China and the West. Europe was about to feel the consequences of this crisis, as the world watched and waited to see what would happen next. The Dutch seizure of Nexperia provoked a swift and devastating response from Beijing. China didn't waste time with diplomatic protests. It halted all exports of Nexperia chips from its Chinese factories to Europe. The impact was immediate. European assembly lines, especially in the automotive sector, ground to a halt for want of basic components. Cars sat unfinished, factories idled, and the economic losses mounted by the day. The disruption rippled through supply chains, affecting everything from industrial machinery to home appliances. China had weaponized its control over global supply chains, inflicting massive economic pain without firing a shot. European policymakers were stunned by the speed and precision of China's retaliation. The crisis exposed just how deeply Europe depended on Chinese manufacturing. The balance of power was clear, and it wasn't in Europe's favor. With its industries paralyzed and production lines grinding to a halt, the Dutch government scrambled for a way out. Factories stood silent, workers waited anxiously, and the nation's economic future hung in the balance. The sense of urgency was palpable in every government office and boardroom. Pressure from Germany and the EU mounted, turning what began as a Dutch-Chinese dispute into a full-blown European crisis. European leaders realized that the chip shortage threatened not just one country, but the entire continent's technological edge and economic stability. High-level talks began, with the EU desperate to restore the flow of chips. Negotiators worked around the clock, seeking common ground and creative solutions as the stakes grew higher with each passing day. The breakthrough finally came at the COP30 summit in Brazil. China agreed to resume exports, but only if Europe guaranteed the chips would be used solely for civilian purposes. This agreement was hard-won, the result of intense backroom diplomacy and global pressure. This condition gave Beijing unprecedented leverage over European industry, allowing China to monitor and influence how its technology was deployed across the continent. Relief swept through Europe's factories as production resumed, but the terms revealed a new reality. China could now dictate how its components were used abroad, and Europe's autonomy was diminished. The Dutch government had won back chip supplies, but at the cost of ceding control over a critical sector. The victory felt bittersweet, shadowed by the concessions made. The crisis had shifted the power dynamic decisively in China's favor, marking a turning point in global trade relations and technological competition. Europe had to accept Beijing's terms to keep its industries running, knowing that future negotiations would be shaped by this new imbalance. The lesson was clear. Economic dependence comes with strings attached, and the cost of vulnerability can be measured in both power and policy. As chip exports resumed, Nexperia itself became a battleground. The crisis fractured the company's Dutch and Chinese leadership, turning internal tensions into a public feud. Dutch managers accused their Chinese owners of putting politics above business, while Wingtech blamed the Dutch for provoking the crisis. The company's unity shattered, with each side seeing the other as an agent of a hostile power. The infighting spilled into the media, further damaging Nexperia's reputation. Beijing seized on the chaos, amplifying criticism of the Dutch government. With Nexperia's leadership at war, a stable solution seemed out of reach. The company was no longer a bridge, it was a symbol of division. The Nexperia crisis was a wake-up call for Europe, exposing its vulnerability in the global tech supply chain. The Dutch government's attempt to assert control was crushed by China's economic counterstrike. Europe's scramble to restore chip supplies showed that economic pain trumped security principles. The episode revealed deep divisions within the EU, with national interests undermining a unified response. China exploited these rifts, forcing Europe to concede. The crisis set a new precedent. Beijing could oversee the end use of its exports. For Europe, the lesson was harsh. Supply chain security is now a matter of national security. The need to diversify, invest in domestic manufacturing, and act as a united bloc has never been clearer. The quest for technological sovereignty is now an urgent imperative. The Nexperia saga marks the start of a new era in Europe-China tech relations, one defined by tension and strategic rivalry. Europe's dependence on China is now seen as a liability, not just an asset. The future will bring a push to onshore chip production, diversify suppliers, and tighten investment screening. Initiatives like the European Chips Act will accelerate, but building resilience will take time and resources. Europe can't fully decouple from China, but it must recalibrate the relationship, moving from naive dependence to cautious engagement. The crisis has shown that supply chain security is inseparable from national security. The fight for technological independence has only just begun. Europe's next moves will shape the balance of power for years to come.